Ben and Sarah thought they scored the ultimate pandemic-era relic, a massive 5-bedroom Victorian house in upstate New York, purchased sight unseen at a foreclosure auction. The first 3 days were filled with the chaotic euphoria of unpacking, but by day 4, the house began to reject them. Sarah is the first to notice the acoustic anomaly in the master bedroom. It isn't a creak or a settling pipe. It is a rhythmic, dry scratching sound coming from directly behind the headboard, like fingernails scraping against raw drywall. Ben laughs it off as mice spraying peppermint oil along the baseboards, but that night, the sound evolves. As the digital clock clicks to 3:14 a.m., the scratching stops, replaced by a low, breathless vibration. It sounds exactly like someone trying to clear their throat through a mouthful of sand. Sarah sits up in the dark, her heart hammering against her ribs, straining to listen. The sound shifts, moving laterally inside the wall, sliding past the headboard, down toward the floorboards, and stopping right where her feet would touch the carpet. It isn't a random pest. It has directionality, tracking her movements through the plaster. She whispers Ben's name, but when she turns, her breath catches in her throat. Ben is wide awake, staring blankly at the ceiling, his pupils dilated to the edge of his irises, completely paralyzed. A thin, single drop of dark blood is slowly leaking from his left ear, pooling into the white fabric of the pillowcase. When she screams, the sound inside the wall mimics her perfectly, a pitch-perfect hollow echo of her own terror, vibrating the very wood beneath their bed. Determined to prove they are dealing with a structural issue or a localized infestation, Ben sets up high-definition, motion-activated security cameras in the hallway, the living room, and the master bedroom. The next morning, they pull up the timeline logs on his laptop, expecting to see a stray raccoon or old wiring sparks. Instead, the footage from 3:14 a.m. reveals something far more violating. The camera in the hallway shows the air itself warping, shimmering like a heat mirage, under the doorframe of the guest room. Then, the bedroom camera log shows Ben. In the footage, Ben doesn't look asleep. His body is perfectly rigid, violently twitching at minute intervals, as if receiving micro-electric shocks. Sarah watches herself sleeping soundly next to him, completely oblivious. Suddenly, the drywall directly above their headboard begins to flex. The plaster bows outward, stretching like latex as the distinct silhouette of a human face pushes against the wall from the inside, trying to break through the paint. The features are elongated, the mouth unnaturally wide, frozen in a silent shriek. In the video, the digital audio meter spikes into the red, capturing a horrific, wet, tearing sound. Though Sarah remembers the night being dead silent, right before the camera feed cuts to static, the face in the wall stops fighting the plaster, turns its hidden eyes directly toward the camera lens, and the plaster returns to normal. Ben turns to Sarah, his face pale, and whispers that he doesn't remember anything from last night, except a dream where he was trapped in a dark, suffocating space, screaming until his throat bled, while watching himself sleep from inside the wall. By afternoon, the psychological toll turns into physical obsession. Ben, refusing to leave the house he spent his life savings on, buys a drywall saw and a crowbar. He attacks the master bedroom wall, desperate to find the cavity, the animal, or the hidden crawl space that explains the footage. Sarah begs him to stop, but the air in the house has grown heavy, tasting faintly of copper and old wet soil. As Ben hacks away the modern drywall, he exposes the original 19th century lath and plaster underneath. The wood is black, rotted, and charred from some forgotten, unrecorded fire. But it isn't empty. Stuffed tightly into the gaps between the wooden slats are dozens of old decaying photographs from the 1920s through the 1980s. Sarah pulls one out, her hands shaking. They are Polaroids and sepia prints of previous tenants, all taken while they were sleeping in this exact room, shot from a high angle near the ceiling. Every single face in the photos has been meticulously scratched out with a needle. Ben ignores her cries, tearing deeper into the wall until he exposes the main structural void. The space between the inner bedroom wall and the outer brickwork is barely 8 inches wide, impossible for a human to fit inside. Yet plastered against the back of the brick are hundreds of calcified, skeletal handprints worn deeply into the mortar. They aren't pointing outward as if trying to escape. They are pointed downward, clawing their way down into the dark, subterranean foundation of the house. From the bottom of the dark gap, a freezing foul draft blows upward, carrying the distinct, unmistakable scent of Sarah's own perfume. The sun goes down before they can pack their bags, casting long, bruised shadows across the gutted bedroom. The power suddenly fails, plunging the Victorian into an oppressive, absolute darkness that their flashlights can barely pierce. They retreat to the living room, barricading the door, sitting back to back on the floor. At 3:14 a.m., the house falls into a terrifying, vacuum-like silence. The scratching doesn't return to the bedroom. It begins right behind the living room sofa. This time, there is no drywall to muffle it. The sound breaks through the floorboards. A heavy, wet, dragging noise, like a saturated weight being pulled across old timber. Then, the voice begins. It is Sarah's voice, coming from the dark hallway upstairs, crying out for help, weeping in agonizing pain. "Ben, please, come up here. It's so dark. It hurts," the voice wails, nailing her exact vocal inflections, her specific speech patterns. Sarah grips Ben's hand, her own voice caught in her throat, watching the hallway door vibrate. Before Ben can react, another voice joins the first. It is Ben's voice, coming from the kitchen downstairs, laughing hysterically, repeating the exact words he said when they first moved in. "It's just mice, honey, just old house noises." The two voices begin to overlap, shouting, crying, mimicking arguments they had days ago, building into a deafening, discordant choir of their own stolen identities. The air grows so cold that their breath forms thick white clouds in the flashlight beam. The shadows on the wall begin to detach themselves from the furniture, standing upright, stretching toward the ceiling, closing the circle around them. The flashlights flicker and die simultaneously, leaving only the pale ambient moonlight filtering through the bay windows. In the dim light, Sarah looks at Ben, but the man sitting next to her is no longer moving. His skin has taken on the gray, matte texture of unpainted plaster. His eyes are wide, glassy, and completely hollowed out, staring into the dark corner of the room. The scratching sound is no longer coming from the walls or the floors. It is coming from inside Ben's chest. Sarah screams, backing away until her spine hits the cold living room wall. As she makes contact, the drywall behind her turns soft, yielding like quicksand, sinking around her shoulders and gripping her arms. She tries to pull away, but the wall is pulling her in, the plaster hardening around her skin like a cast. Across the room, Ben's jaw drops unnaturally low, his mouth opening into a perfect, silent black void. From his throat, a pale, elongated arm, made of hardened ash and dust, slowly extends, reaching out toward her. The fingers brush against her cheek, and she feels her own consciousness beginning to fracture, her memories bleeding out into the woodwork of the house. The stolen voices return one last time, whispering directly into her ears from inside the plaster, welcoming her home. The camera angle slowly pans up to the ceiling, capturing the final desperate struggle as Sarah is pulled completely into the wall, leaving behind only a smooth, flawless patch of gray paint and a suffocating eternal silence.